demand shifting, it's an important piece. Again, it's just a piece. It's a building block. What we really care about in the microeconomy is what was the price and how much did we sell. Because what we really want to figure out is how much money did we make, right? Profit. You're all CEOs of your own, private equity firm that makes whatever it is that you want to make. And your goal, no matter, how you do it, is to make more money. Always. Period. Right? Doesn't matter. You are not an altruistic person in any way, shape, or form when you become CEO of a corporation. All right? Even when you're donating money to altruistic, entities, you're doing it to get tax breaks and to make your company look better so that people will buy more of your products so that you will be more profitable. That's really the only reason that large companies donate money. Anybody who says they do it because they're nice is the biggest liar that exists. Okay? It sounds nice, right? But it's all baloney, folks. The job is to make money, right? Their job is to see profit at the end of each quarter. That's their jobs. Okay, so I have to ask all of you to put away your niceness and pull out, the asshole inside of yourself and let it rule. Well, not necessarily, but in the business world, it does tend to be that way. All right, so since we sort of focused on shoes all day, let's stick to the shoe market. And in general, when you are talking about how does supply and demand change the price, what we tend to do is to say, okay, at a given time, assume we are at equilibrium. For one minute second, we are at equilibrium, right? You hear the angels singing in the back of your head, and you feel content and overwhelmed with happiness, because here is where the price is. All right, so we're in the shoe market at equilibrium. Is it going to last? No. Of course not, because reality never lasts longer than about a second. All right? So the current price is right here. This is our equilibrium price. All right, and if we wanted to, we could also say, here is our equilibrium quantity. So, now we need to have some economic events happening, all right? And let's just stick to the quiz, right? So the Converse company goes bankrupt and quits making shoes. They exit the market. True. Aw. I used to like the high-top Chucks, the old ones back in the 70s. Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah. All right, so my question to you now is, instead of telling me what happens to supply and or demand, is to tell me what happens to price and quantity. All right? So chapter 4 is, when an event occurs, what happens to P and Q? Because that's what we really care about. And again, from an economist's perspective, price and quantity only change because of changes in demand, not the other way around. All right? Behavior can change due to prices being at a specific point, but changes in prices and changes in quantities are strictly driven by supply and demand. All right? And of course, there are exceptions, and we'll get to those when we get to chapters 7 and 8. But for right now, it's all supply and demand. So when you read this statement, your first step is to figure out what happened to supply and or demand. So if a company that makes shoes leaves the market, what happened? How did it fit into our non-price determinants? Number of sellers decreased, so therefore, there's no buyers up here. Supply decreased, right? Okay, so step 1 to the process of what happened to price and quantity is always what happened to supply and or demand, right? That's always your first step when you're telling me how did price and quantity change, is to tell me which changed, supply and or demand, right? That's always step 1. So in this case, due to a decrease in sellers, supply fell. All right, now, after a change in supply and demand, the next thing that's going to happen is that we are going to have one of two things happening. Either we are going to have a temporary shortage, or we are going to have a temporary surplus if the price doesn't change. And the price won't change right away because it takes a while. All right? So the key here is if supply is cut, if there is less supply, what are you going to have more likely, a surplus or a shortage? You're going to have less supply, so you expect there to be a shortage. All right? So your next step, step 2, is always, based on the change in supply or demand, did we have a shortage or a surplus? Always. One of the two. You got a 50-50 shot on this part of the question every time. All right? A shortage arrives due to decreased supply. And yes, we will get to an example where a surplus happens, but you know. There's not enough supply, there's a shortage. What always follows a shortage? Price increases, right? Anytime there's a shortage, the people who are selling that product realize that they're selling out of it, right? And normally when shortages occur, folks, what happens is that retailers don't put everything that they have out on the shelves, right? They put somewhere between 25 and 75% of their product on the shelves, and they've got a bunch of it in a warehouse in reserve anytime they need to go get it, right? So they'll put a certain number of it on the shelves. If they start selling out faster than they expected, when they go to restock, what do? They raise the price.
So the first question was what happened to supply and or demand.
Yep.
The second was based on supply and demand, did we have a surplus or a shortage? And the third question is what happens to the price?
Yep. And the cool thing about it is that this is very mathematical. The steps are well defined. When you have a decrease in supply, you will always have a shortage. It doesn't matter whether the supply was shoes, whether it's eyeglasses, whether it's hats, whether it's white markers, doesn't matter. Anytime you say supply fell, there's a shortage of it, period. Right? And what always follows a shortage? Price raises, period. Right? Always. The last step then is now we know what happened to price. Now we just need to know what happened to quantity technically because that's what we want to know about. But it's going to relate to demand. Right, so the last step to figure out quantity is to say, okay, my first line had to deal with supply. That means that your last line has to deal with the other side. What's the other side of supply? Demand. Right. So when the price goes up, do we demand more or less? Less. Therefore, the quantity demanded falls, and quantity as a subsequence falls. So our last step is then to say, due to the rise in price, quantity demanded falls. And this is another reason why students have a tendency to say whenever supply or demand changes, the other side changes at the same time. Because notice that I've said supply fell, and then down here I said demand fell, except that what led the word demand was the fact that it was really the quantity side of demand. All right, now, these are the words. And the words will often be relatively straightforward as long as you don't screw up the first step.
And you said if the first question deals with supply, then the last question must deal with demand.
Yes. And we'll do one where we start with demand here in a second. Now, what I want to do is to see if the graph agrees with our words. Because what do I do normally when I do number one? When supply falls, what should I do on the graph? I should shift supply to left. So I'm going to get me a different color. New colors will help here. Here is my new supply curve, right? Because supply shifted to the left. When I have a new supply curve, the old supply curve is gone, right? The thing about it is that the price persists. So where is my new equilibrium?
Where demand and supply.
Where supply and demand hit, it's just that now supply has shifted, right? So here's where the price is right now. This is where equilibrium is, right? The price is too low. What happens when the price is too low? You have a shortage. Oh yeah, that's what we said. We have a shortage, right? Well, at this point, where's the price at this point?
It rose.
Here's the new price. How does that compare to the old price? It's higher. What did we say happened to price? It went up. All right. Where's the quantity at this new equilibrium? Shoot it down. What happened to quantity? It fell. What did we say down here? Our quantity demanded fell. The graph and the words should always go together, right? And whichever one you are better at, that's the one you start with. If you are better dealing with the pictures and being able to tell where the point is compared to the other point, great, start with the picture. I'm a math guy, folks. I'm always going to draw the picture first, okay? But that's just because I'm a math guy. If you are more of a math guy than all this logic about whether or not supply goes up or down, but, start with the graph maybe, right? Because the real goal of this exercise here is to say, okay, which one moved, and then compare the points. So I don't need any of these words. If I see this first one and I draw supply decreased, I look at this point and that point and say, what happened to price and quantity? Price went up, quantity went down.
And you're always going to assume when beginning these that
you're at equilibrium.
Okay.
Yeah, we will always start at equilibrium.
And that's our ceteris paribus for this particular.
But, So 2 things you got to be able to do. Say the words, draw the graph. All right, so let's try another one. This time let's go to demand. All right, so we're in the shoe market still. Let's suppose our event this time is, we already worked with a little bit. Incomes in the U.S. rise by 10%. All right, and again, assume you started at equilibrium. So our current price is right here, and our current quantity is right there. And again, notice, folks, I didn't put any numbers up here. There's no there's no math going on in any of this stuff. The only math that we're really doing is comparing where is the price here to where is the price there, and where is the quantity here versus where is the quantity there. That's it, right? You're not having to do any addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, none of that crap, right? And so there's no math. So you don't have to freak about that. All right, so again, let's start with the words. First step. What happens when incomes go up? Why is demand going to go up? Because shoes are normal. Exactly, right. So shoes are normal. If I could spell the word normal. So increase income will increase demand. First step. Now, your second step is always whether or not there's going to be a shortage or surplus because of this change in supply or demand. Now, if demand goes up, are we going to have a shortage or a surplus? Demand is going up. We're buying more of the product. If we're going to buy more, shortage. Shortage ensues. So there's one side, so there's two ways that shortages can happen, folks, and I've just given them both to you. Either supply can fall, suppliers are the reason that we have a shortage, or it could be the buyer side, the demand side, and that's if we buy too much. All right? There's only two, those are the only two ways you can have a shortage, right? So there's a really nice little grid that you can draw that says, you know, these two things lead to shortage. The other two things, where supply rises or demand falls, that's going to lead to surplus, all right? Now, since it's a shortage, what happens next? Prices are going to go up. And now our first step was to say that demand moved. So what are we going to look at this from?
Supply.
We're going to look at this from the supply perspective, right? So we had demand up here. So now, when the price goes up, what do sellers do?
Supply more.
They supply more. So our last step is higher price makes quantity supplied increase. All right, now let's do the picture again and make sure that it agrees. So our first step was demand increases. So for us, we say, great, here's demand. Here's my new demand curve. Here is my new equilibrium. This is the new equilibrium. Where's the price right now? It's too low. When the price is too low, that's when we have shortages. When you have a shortage, what's going to happen to the price? It's going to go up. Where is our price? It's higher. At this point, what happened to quantity? Quantity rose. Quantity supplied increases. All right? Another neat little trick is that in your first step, if you have a decrease in supply, you will always have a decrease in quantity, period. It makes sense, right? If there's less supplying out there, you're not going to see more bought or sold. You can't, right? Not in the initial first step. Similarly here, what happened to demand? It went up. So step one, the increase-decrease word, will always be the same as the increase-decrease word in step 4. Always the same. So anytime that you see a decrease in supply, you will see a decrease in quantity. Similarly, anytime you see a decrease in demand, you will also see a decrease in quantity. Right? So there's a lot of very mathematical type of steps in here, and hopefully they will give you a clear map to where we want to go. All right, we got time for maybe one more. All right, let's move into the gas industry. All right, so again, assume we're in equilibrium. And here is our event. U.S. government quits subsidizing the gas industry. So the U.S. government gives Mobil Mobil Corporation $10 million every year to subsidize its gas production. Let's imagine that Congress meets next month and decides to take that away. Why? Because our government's going into debt, right? So this would be a good way to stop doing it. Quit giving away free money. All right, so the question is, what happens to the gas industry or to gas prices and quantity when the government quits subsidizing it?
Supply will be less.
All right, so subsidies. Again, please note that it's over here. Subsidies are actually direct. Taxes are inverse. Subsidies are direct. Strike it and reverse it then. So, again, the trick here is that we are quitting subsidies. So there are less subsidies. If there are less subsidies, then you will have that direct relationship. Therefore, there is less supply. So our first step is that less subsidies equals less supply. And I will start to simplify the writing as I go along here and not put in all the words and make it look a little cleaner. When supply decreases, we're not getting as much made, there will be a shortage of gas, right? Because Mobil won't be able to produce as much because they're not getting free $10 million to invest in finding and shipping gas. Whenever you have a shortage, what happens to price? Shortages always lead to prices going up. Last step, what happens to the quantity of gas? Exactly. So look at it from the supply perspective up here. So we're going to analyze price according to demand. When the price goes up, how much do we demand? We demand less. So here in this case, the quantity demanded falls. So what you can expect if the government decides to quit subsidizing Mobil, what's going to happen to gas prices? They're going up, folks. Here's the picture. And this picture should look very, very, very familiar because it's exactly the same as a company leaving the shoe market, right? Because the first step is the same. If supply goes down, that's what happens, right? So here's our old equilibrium. Here's our new one, price and the quantity. The price went up, the quantity went down. All right. We got nowhere near finishing chapter 4, so there's no homework for next week or next class. Wait, is that next week?
Yes.
What's today? Yeah, next week. So if you didn't finish the chapter 3 homework, by all means, please finish it and turn it in at the beginning of class on Monday. We will start with this on Monday, and I'm going to have 3 volunteers who are going to come up and do this at the board on Monday.
And we get 20 extra points for doing so, right?
Well, you definitely get extra credit for coming up to the board. So
Even if you do it wrong?
I will guide you as you do it, so you will not do it wrong. Because when you go to the board, you become the teacher, I become the student, and I will ask why all the time.
You become a 4-year-old.
No. Well, yes, but no.
Kids did.
Marshall, is this on or is this off? You told me to turn it off, didn't you?
Did you turn it on or turn it off?
You told me to stop, but I'm not sure.
If you haven't stopped it, please stop it.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.